This is a free course. No fluff, no nonsense. A direct and deep dive into the most powerful concepts of Carl Gustav Jung's psychology, with a clear goal to help you master your shadow and become emotionally unshakable. Who should watch until the end? Anyone facing anxiety, depression, feelings of guilt, anger, grief, or any type of psychological suffering. Those who already realize they are stuck, repeating self-destructive behavior patterns. Those who feel that no matter how hard they try, they cannot achieve the emotional control they desire. Those who carry pains they cannot name, but that weigh on them every day. This content is for you. Throughout this video, you will clearly and practically understand what the shadow is. You will learn how it silently shapes your feelings, thoughts, and impulses. You will discover why so many of the emotions you cannot control, outbursts of anger, anxiety attacks, unexplained sadness, chronic guilt, do not arise from external situations, but from unresolved conflicts within you. And more importantly, you will learn how to face all of this, not with superficial positive thinking techniques, but with a real, deep, and transformative method. A method based on over a century of deep psychology, teaching you to confront the most hidden parts of your psyche and integrate them. This is not a video for passive consumption. Pause when necessary. Take notes. Go back and watch again. Each concept presented here can change the way you understand yourself and how you deal with the world, but only if you apply it. It's not enough to just watch. It's personal work that requires courage. And yes, it will require discomfort. But on the other side of that discomfort is the emotional freedom you seek. You will learn why the repression of the shadow is at the root of many psychological disorders. How the persona, the mask you show to the world, contributes to your emotional fragility. How the archetypes of the collective unconscious manifest in your daily life, and how all this knowledge can be transformed into practical action. This is a complete course, a solid foundation for anyone wishing to start or deepen the process of individuation, the path that Jung described as the true purpose of human life, to become who you are. Now, if you really want to free yourself from the psychological suffering that accompanies you, if you want to be someone who can navigate the most difficult emotions without being destroyed by them, you are in the right place. But remember, only those who watch until the end and practice what is taught here will achieve real results. Let's get started. The shadow. This is the name that Carl Gustav Jung gave to the set of everything you reject, repress, or simply refuse to acknowledge in yourself. And this is where we truly begin this course, understanding what the shadow is and why it exerts such a devastating power over your emotional life. Imagine the following. Since childhood, you have been taught, by your parents, by school, by society, about what is acceptable and what is not. You were praised when you were nice, polite, obedient. You were criticized or punished when you showed anger, envy, selfishness, deep sadness, impulses considered ugly or wrong. And, like every child, you quickly learned. Certain emotions and behaviors need to be hidden, pushed into a dark corner of your psyche. This is how the shadow is born. But what happens to everything that has been repressed? It does not disappear. On the contrary, it remains alive, growing in the unconscious, shaping your reactions, your thoughts, your feelings. The shadow is the sum of all these denied aspects of the personality. It is the dark side that you do not want to see, but that inevitably acts upon you. Anxiety, often an indirect manifestation of the shadow. Depression, a buildup of unprocessed emotions trapped in the darkness of the psyche. Explosive anger, the cry of repressed parts that can no longer be ignored. self-sabotage, an internal attack from the shadow itself against the conscious goals of the ego. The shadow is not evil in itself. It contains aspects that could, in fact, be sources of strength and creativity if integrated in a healthy way. But as long as it is not recognized, the shadow will continue to operate autonomously. And that is why so many people live trapped in cycles of emotional suffering that they cannot explain. They feel overwhelmed by uncontrollable emotions, by self-destructive impulses, by patterns of behavior that repeat like an endless nightmare. And here is the truth that few have the courage to face. You are not just the image you have built of yourself. You are not just your good side, your light side. You are also what you fear most to admit. And the more you run from it, the weaker you become emotionally. Integrating the shadow is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. It is recognizing that anger, envy, fear, the desire for control, all of this is part of the human experience, and that only by bringing these aspects to consciousness can you prevent them from continuing to sabotage your life from the shadows. In the next few minutes, you will see even more clearly how the shadow is acting in your daily life, how it controls your emotions and reactions in ways you do not even perceive. If you think you are in control of your emotions, prepare for an uncomfortable revelation. In the next part, we will explore exactly how the shadow controls your emotions and your decisions, and why it is impossible to become emotionally unshakable while you do not understand this mechanism. Now that you understand what the shadow is, it's time to grasp how it impacts your life in a much more direct way than you might imagine, especially in your emotions and decisions. The shadow is not an abstract concept. It acts every day, shaping feelings, impulses, and choices. Jung explained that, as long as we do not make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct our life, and we will call it fate. This is the key to understanding why so many emotions seem to escape your control. You see, from a very early age, you were taught to repress certain feelings: anger, envy, fear, selfishness. You learned to hide impulses considered socially unacceptable. But what is repressed does not disappear. It remains alive, charged with emotional energy, acting autonomously through the shadow. When you feel an anxiety you cannot explain, you are often dealing with unrecognized shadow content. Similarly, disproportionate outbursts of anger, deep sadness without apparent cause, constant guilt, all of these are signs that the shadow is in control. In Psychology of the Unconscious, Jung warned, repressed contents do not cease to exist. They become autonomous forces that can invade and dominate consciousness at any moment. This explains why many emotional reactions seem to happen automatically. They are responses from unconscious complexes, fragments of the psyche that act under the command of the shadow. The decisions you make are also deeply influenced by this process, repeating toxic patterns in relationships, sabotaging professional opportunities, adopting self-deprecating attitudes. All of this is fueled by shadow content that you have not integrated. As long as you believe you are in total control of your emotions and choices without first facing your shadow, you will be living an illusion. Your shadow does not disappear just because you ignore or rationalize your emotions. On the contrary, it strengthens in the darkness. But the good news is that there is a way out of this cycle, and it begins with awareness. Identifying the patterns of the shadow is the first step to regaining emotional control and truly becoming a resilient and whole person. However, there is a fundamental obstacle that prevents most people from starting this journey. The persona, your social mask, built to please, to protect, to fit in, ends up reinforcing the dominance of the shadow. Now pay close attention, because this is important. If you've made it this far, you're probably asking yourself, how can I actually apply all of this in my life? Because knowing, just knowing, changes nothing. What transforms you is practice. And that to understand how the shadow maintains control over your life, it is essential to comprehend the role of the persona, the social mask you have built to survive and adapt to the world. Jung describes the persona as a system of adaptation or relationship with the external world. In other words, it is the image you present to be accepted, respected, or loved. It is not who you truly are, but who you have learned to appear to be. Since childhood, you notice that certain behaviors generate approval, while others lead to punishment or rejection. Naturally, you learn to emphasize the pleasing aspects and hide those that are not. Over time, this adaptation crystallizes. You wear the persona like armor, an idealized version of yourself that you carry into relationships, work, and social life. But here lies the problem. Everything you repress to maintain this mask ends up being pushed into the shadow. The more rigid and perfect the persona, the more psychic material accumulates in the darkness of the unconscious. Therefore, people who seem extremely controlled, always positive, and impeccable in public often struggle in secret with deep states of anxiety, depression, explosive anger, or a suffocating sense of emptiness. The price of sustaining an idealized persona is extremely high. In Modern Man in Search of a Soul, Jung warns, the persona is a compromise with society, but also a self-deception, as it distances us from what we truly are. The more you believe you are your persona, the more disconnected you become from your authentic self, and the more vulnerable you are to the manipulations of the shadow. This internal conflict generates constant emotional fatigue. You expend energy trying to maintain an artificial image while repressed aspects of the psyche demand attention. It is a game that cannot be won. The shadow will always find ways to manifest, whether through physical symptoms, emotional crises, or impulsive behaviors. The solution? Start dismantling that mask. Recognize that you are not the persona. You are a whole human being with lights and shadows. Integrating these aspects is the only way to achieve true emotional freedom. And the first step toward that is learning to identify the elements of your shadow. How does it manifest in your daily life? How can you begin to notice your hidden patterns? This is exactly what you will discover in the next part.